No yawning.
Johnny? Where's Johnny?
Samech Vav 66, Eruvin. Also, Shaila Rav Yochanan, Arma Lahan, Yafa Asisam Schartem. This was a case where a non-Jew arrived on Shabbos into the inn and they rented from him even though he wasn't there before Shabbos. So Tohu Bonardoi. They were wondering, the Nardoi, the Tamil Chacham Nardoi were wondering, Umi Amar Rav Yochanan Hachi? Did Rav Yochanan really say that you could do this? Rav Yochanan, Socher Kema'ariv Dami. Renting is similar to making an Eruv. So we deduce from there, my love, mama ariv mi bod yom. Just like with an Eruv, you've got to lay the Eruv down before Shabbos. You can't all of a sudden do it on Shabbos. So avsoicha mi bod yom. So renting the space that the Gentile owns in the Chutzner, you also have to do before Shabbos. Of course, it's low. That's not the way to learn. Mama arev, afilu b'pachos b'shava pruta. Just like you can make an eruv. Eruv that doesn't have to be worth a pruta. It's a special kula that as long as it's a piece of bread, but even if it's less than shava pruta, you can use that for the eruv. So renting from a non-Jew could be done also less than shava pruta. And not that we say that it has to be done mibod yom. Really, Rav Yochanan can hold that you can rent it from him even when he arrives on Shabbos. Umama arev afilu schira lekito. We said that you can rent from the non-Jew through his workers. You don't have to do it directly from himself. So, he said if making an Eruv, let's say a non-Jew has a Jewish worker. So you can collect funds from the Jewish worker and have him contribute to the Eruv, and therefore that's a way to get the non-Jews' ownership to be part of the Eruv. So renting from the non-Jew can also be done through his worker. There are 5 people living in a chutzner. For example, if you have 2 chatzeros and there's a door between them, and you come to make an eruv between the 2 chatzeros, one of the people in that chutzner, not all 5 have to go and take the eruv to the other chutzner to combine them in an eruv. He's a shliach for the chaverim. All 5 don't have to go. So if you have 5 people dwelling with the non-Jew in one chutzner, only one of them serves as the sort of the shaliach for the other 5 to rent the portion of the Gentiles' ownership in the chutzner from the Gentile, so that they'd all be allowed to carry, all be allowed to use the chutzner. Toiba Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was surprised by these statements. Why was he surprised? Rav Sheshes, Gavra Rabbi Krab Zera Lo Yoda, my time to Rabbi Eliezer. A big Talmid Chacham of Guzay doesn't know what was bothering Rabbi Eliezer. Kakasha later Shmuel Rabbi. He had the same problem that Shmuel had. What's that? Domer Shmuel. This is a bit complicated. Kol makom she'oisrin uma'arvin. In any situation, which we will describe what these situations will be shortly. But if you have a scenario where if you didn't make an eruv, they would be prohibited to let's say go from their bias into a chutzner. and they have the possibility of making an Eruv, Mevatlin, then those people have the right to be Mevatel their Rishus to the other person in a Chatzar. Now, Ma'arvin ve'ein oisrin, if Jews in a Chatzar or the scenario can make an Eruv, but really without the Eruv they don't prohibit, or oisrin ve'ein ma'arvin, they prohibit people, but they don't participate in Eruv. Now, an obvious example of that one would be a Gentile who lives in a Chatzar. He prohibits, but he's not part of the Eruv. So in those cases, ein mevatlin. Those people cannot be mevatel their rishus. Third case. No. So now the Gemara looks for examples. We said kol makom she'oisrin ma'arvin, that if you didn't make an eruv, they would prohibit on each other. And there's a possibility of making an eruv. We said in that situation, each person could be mevatel their rishus. That's the classic case we've been describing of an inner chutzner and an outer chutzner, right? The person from the inner chutzner has to go through the outer chutzner to go to the outside. Rashi says, if the two chutznerim did not make an eruv, and not only that, if the pnimis chutzner didn't make an eruv by itself, they would aser even on the outer chutzner. I feel Rabbanan the pligel Rabbi Kiva. Even the Chachamim who argued with Rabbi Kiva moided the regular oseret b'mkomo oseret shalom b'mkomo. So, for example, the inner chutzner, if they didn't make an eruv with each other, they wouldn't be able to walk into their chutzner. So they certainly aser when they walk through an area that doesn't belong to them. Since the inner people have to use the outer chutzner to leave, they aser there. However, however, they have the potential, the inner and the outer chutzner can make an eruv together. And if they didn't make an eruv, they can mevatlin b'nei pimius rishus l'bnei chitzona. The right of passage that the inner people have to walk through the outer chutzner, which asers to the outer chutzner people, they can mevatel their rishus. So that fulfills criteria number one of kol makom she'oisrin ma'arvin mevatlin. So a good example is shtei chatzer zu liftim izu. Now, what's an example of ma'arvin ve'ein oisrin? They can make an eruv, but without eruv, they also don't prohibit. And in that situation, ein mevatlin. What's the example? Kigon shtei chatzeros u'pesach echad beineim. There are two houses side by side. They both open up into a Rishus Harabim, let's say. There's a door between these two chatzeros. Now, if they want, they can make an eruv. But if they didn't make an eruv, each one is permitted, if they made their own eruv, to carry from their bias into the chutzer. So in that situation, there's no bittul rishus. If, let's say, they decide one wants to carry from one chutzer to the other, and they didn't do it before, Chachamim only established bittul rishus if there's a prohibition. Without it, there's no prohibition. Without it, there's no bittul rishus. So that's the second case. And what's the example of the third case? Oisrin ve'ein ma'arvin. We said ein mevatlin. Lasu yimai. Isn't it lavlas? Doesn't it come to include a nochri? We're talking about a nochri, and a Gentile asers, if he's living in a chutzner with a bunch of Jews, the other Jews can't use it, and yet he can make an eruv. And v'idata me'etmol. So he cannot be mevatel rishus if he shows up on Shabbos. Now, if he showed up before Shabbos, lo yer me'esmol, they could rent it from before Shabbos. Then why do you say oisrin ve'ein ma'arvin? Why would you say he prohibits you can't make an eruv? If you rent it from him from before Shabbos, you can make an eruv. Ela Lav must be that case is talking about the Asa b'Shabbata. He arrived on Shabbos. Ukitani. Remember, we started off by saying Shmuel argues with Rav Yochanan. We started off by saying Rav Yochanan says that if the non-Jew arrives on Shabbos, you could rent it from him. So, and Rabbi Elazar had a problem with it. And we asked, what's the problem? Rabbi Elazar had the same problem as his Rabbi Shmuel. Shmuel says, this case must be Ela Lav Dasa b'Shabbos. Viktani oisrin ve'marvin. Ein mevatlin. Shema minon. It's a good raya that you cannot be mevatel from him or rent it from him if he showed up on Shabbos. That's why Rabbi Elazar had a problem. Amar Rav Yosef, lo yishmi'a li ha'ishmaitza. No, I haven't heard this whole sugya that Shmuel gave these criteria of when you can be mevatel, when you can't be mevatel. Amar le Abaya, you know what? At amrit ni'alan, remember, Rav Yosef got sick and forgot his learning. And many times his students, like Abaya and Rava, would remind him that not only do you know it, you told it to us. Right? Ad amrit ni'alan. The amrit ni'alan. This is how you said it. Amar Shmuel. Ein bittul rishus mechotzer l'chotzer. So number one, you have two chatzeiros that open up to each other. One person, one chotzer cannot be mevatel rishus to the other person in the chotzer. They can mevatel rishus to the people in their chotzer, but you can't do a trans chotzer. Number two, ein bittul rishus b'churba. If you have homes that open up into like a ruin, and neither can use it, you can't be mevatel rishus one to the other, to allow the other person to be able to go into the ruin. Chachamim only were permitted bittul rishus in a chotzer in front of a house. There they were mekel, because that's how houses use chatzeros that way, but not into a ruin. And you made a comment when you told us this halacha. Ki Amar Shmuel, when Shmuel indeed said ein bittul rishus mechotzer l'chotzer, when did he say that? Lo amar ela shtei chatzeros u'pesach echad b'neihem. With the side-by-side chatzeros that opened up in Rishus Harabim, but have a door in between them. Then there's no bittul rishus from chotzer l'chotzer. Aval zu lifnim mizu. But an inner chotzer and an outer chotzer, mitoch she'oisrim zeh al zeh, because they each prohibit on each other mevatlin, then they can mevatel even one person living in the chotzer to the outer chotzer. Omer lei, ana amina mishmei Shmuel hachi. Did you learn the words of Shmuel like this? V'amar Shmuel, ein lanu be'eruvin ela keloshen mishnaseinu. In Masechta Eruvin, we have to follow the lashon of the Mishnah. It says anshe chotzer for anshe chatzeros. How can you say that Shmuel accepts the concept that a person from one chotzer can mevatel rishus to another chotzer? It doesn't use the word chatzeros plural. It's only multiple batim that open up into one chotzer. Omer lei, so Rabbi Yosef responded, Ki amrit lan ein lanu be'eruvin el kolosh mishmashenu. Amrit lan sha'mavui lechatzeros kechotzer lebatim. All that meant was, just like you have to have multiple houses that open up to a chotzer, you have to have multiple houses, chatzeros, that open up into a mavui. But not to exclude a case of people being able to mevatel rishus from one chotzer to the other. Okay, Gufa. We discussed these three scenarios, and we're going to go into them in detail. Amar Shmuel, ein bittul rishus mechotzer l'chotzer, that one person in one chotzer cannot be mevatel rishus to a person in the other chotzer. They can do it in their own chotzer, but not from chotzer to chotzer. And ein bittul rishus b'churba, the normal opportunity that a Jew has to mevatel his rishus if he didn't participate in the Eruv to the other Jews, that's when all these homes open up into a chotzer. When they open up into a churba, he has no right to be mevatel his rishus. But Rav Yochanan, no, yesh bittul rishus bechotzer l'chotzer, v'yesh bittul rishus b'churba. We hold like Rav Yochanan in both cases, that you're allowed to be mevatel from reshus from chotzer to chotzer, and if these houses open up into a churba. Zo paskin the Shulchan Aruch. Utzricha. We needed to be told, even though we've had this machlokas before, we needed to be told because the yashmi chotzer lechotzer, or I had to be told by both cases, chotzer to chotzer as well as chotzer to churba. I couldn't have learned one from the other because the yashmi chotzer lechotzer. If you would have told me there's bittul rishus from chotzer lechotzer, or there's no bittul rishus, maybe b'hakam or Shmuel. Maybe that's when he said, because mishum da'at tashmish l'chud, da'at tashmish l'chud. Each chotzer can be used privately. They close off the door between them, and they can and they make an eruv between the batim that open up into that individual chotzer, and therefore they don't have to use each person. Ava churba, the tashmish l'chad l'tarvayu. Both houses open up into this churva, so they both use it. Maybe there, Rav Yochanan. Maybe there Shmuel said, maybe in that case by a churba he can't be mevatel rishus. So we have to be told that no, Shmuel says you can't be mevatel rishus in that case. And maybe if we only have the case of churba b'hakam Rav Yochanan, because there's both houses use it. Avabach to chatzeros, maybe more than Shmuel that you can't. So tzricha, we have to be shown this machlokas in both cases. Amar Abaya. That which Shmuel said, if you have two chatzeros, we said one person cannot be mevatel rishus to the other chatzer. Lo amor elbishtei chatzer so pesach echad beinehem. That was the case. We have side by side chatzeros that open up into rishus harabim. They have their independent door to rishus harabim or mavui. There's a door in between them. In that case, you can't be mevatel chotzer l'chotzer. Aval shtei chatzeros zulif nimizu, but an inner and an outer chotzer, where the inner chotzer has to walk through the outer, and because that drisa saregel, that right of way, that foot passage, that the guy, therefore he has a claim on that outside chotzer, and he asers therefore mitoch sha'oisri mevatlin, because he would otherwise prohibit, he's allowed to mevatel. Like we said before, if you can't, there's no bittul if there's no isser. And since in the case of the two chatzeros side by side, they can close off the door and each one can operate in their own. They don't necessarily aser on each other. That's why there's no bittul rishus. That's a baya. Rav amar filu shtei chatzer zulufni mizu. We're not sure what the din is. Pamim mevatlin, upamim ein mevatlin. It's not a blanket din that an inner chotzer that opens up to an outer chotzer, and the inner people have to go through the outer chotzer to get to the road, and which we said, according to Abaya, everybody would hold that they can be mevatel from chotzer to chotzer. Rava learns no. Sometimes there will be bittul, sometimes there won't. Ketza. What's the criteria? It depends if they have a joint eruv and where they placed it. Nosnu eruvan bechitzona. Let's say the two chatzeros made a joint eruv. Rashi says, "Kein der kishamarvin shtei chatzeros yachol." When two chatzeros make a joint eruv, also eruv sheirvu chatzer zela atzma lahatir diyun shebesocha. Meaning, let's say you have a chotzer, and the inner chotzer has many homes that open up into it. In order for those homes to carry into the chotzer, of course, they have to make an eruv. Now, if you want to then make an eruv between these two chatzeros, you just take that inner eruv and you place it in the outer chotzer. So therefore, nosnu eruvin bechitzona. Now, one of the Jews in either the inner or the outer, so shtei asuros. So neither chutzner, neither people can carry from their bat into the chutzner. Lo ma'anele bittul. The Gemara will explain why not. However, if nosnu eruvin bepnimis, let's say it was a situation where the people in the outer chutzner made an eruv, and they put that eruv inside the inner chutzner. And shochach echad ben pnimis, one of the inner people forgot v'lo yirev shtein asuros. So bittul will not work. However, shochach echad ben chitzona v'lo yirev. If one of the outer people forgot, then pnimis muteres. The people can carry in the inner chutzner from their houses to the chutzner. V'chitzona asura. Rashi, because ayadei bittul, shebitul lahen osam b'nei chitzona shenos eruvin l'solcha. The people on the outside mevatel their reshus to the inner people. V'yirgila eruvin l'schasher kidur pnimis. It becomes the inner one. Right, their foot drop, if they walk outside, are going to answer to the outer. So one of those people, shachal v'lo ira, voiser shalom koma, hoil v'yirgila eruv sham, u'moyd shmuel b'adim avatlin osa regal shirgila eruv tachap pnimis, u'mishtar pnimis latzman. Therefore, the inner one will be permitted. Now, back to the Gemara, nosnu eruvin b'chitzona. If they didn't put the eruv, the outer people made an eruv. Rather than put it on the inside, they put it on the outside. Neither would be able to use their chutzner. Because haibar pnimis leman niftil. Let's say one of the inner people forgot. So who is he going to be mevatel reshus to? Liftil of pnimis, is he going to be mevatel to the people on the inside? Less l'ruga. There's the eruv is not there. The eruv was placed on the outside. Liftil of chitzona, where it is. You can't violate this trans chutzner bittul process. And what about the outer person? Let's say one of the outer people forgot. Can they be mevatel? Hi, bar chitzon l'may niftel. Who will the bar chitzona, the one who's living in the outside, who will he be mevatel to? Liftel of chitzona. He can't just be mevatel of chitzona. Ika pnimis dasra layu. The inner people who have to walk through, have a right of way of passage, they also are going to asr, and they can't be mevatel to the inner people because it can't go from chutzner to chutzner, right? Live till of neighbor saying bishul bitul rishus mechatzer lechutzner. So it's like a catch-22. Now we're not completed. Nosnu eruvin b'pnimis. If the outside people had made an eruv and they placed the eruv into the inside chutzner, right? And one of the inner people didn't participate. Again, it prohibits both because high bar pnimis laman niftil. The person who forgot on the inside, who is it going to be mevatel reshus to? Liftil of pnimis iki chitzon d'asr layu. There's still the outer people who will asr, because they put their eruv on the inside. We're going to now do 67, Mario.